Are you tired of not having any time to read ever?
Oh God, I have to go.
Are you perhaps intimidated by all those books in your bookshelf that seem so big and daunting?
There are so many words.
Are you tired of this happening?
Ow.
Then boy do I have a solution for you. Short books. They are tiny, compact, and they fit right into your pocket, so you can be stylish and cultured. Short Book, the book for every occasion. Call the number down below for a chance to win one of our special short books. This offer is not included in the following countries: USA, Canada, France, Italy, Europe, Narnia, Hogwarts, every country, Mars, District 9, nowhere ever.
Hi, hello, good morning. Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you hadn't guessed, today we are discussing teeny tiny books for those of us who have a goldfish attention span. Let's start with one of my favorites. I have read this book in this winter actually, so it's a very recent read and I loved it. It was wonderful and delightful, and I've already talked about this in my wrap-up, I think, but I'm going to talk about this here, and it's The Moomins and the Great Flood by Tove Jansson. I've talked about the Moomins a lot on my channel because I love the Moomins. If you didn't know, the Moomins are these little white creatures that Tove Jansson created that go on adventures in Moomin Valley. They have tons of other cute creature friends, and there's also, I believe, a human that we don't know if it's a human or a Hemulet, that it's Snufkin. If you didn't know, there are 3 TV shows about the Moomins, one from the 60s or 70s, one from the 90s, and one that it's going on right now. So it's actually very relevant. Tove Jansson is a wonderful writer and a wonderful illustrator. So this is a book, so it has words, but also beautiful illustrations. Like this one's. This is Moomin Mama. There are tons of books on the Moomins. This one has 60 pages, so super short. There are also the comics if you want something even easier and faster to read. I super recommend the Moomins. Yes. Next, something that I feel like everybody has read, but also not. It's a very popular book, and it's The Little Prince, or Le Petit Prince, by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. My French is showing. If you don't know what this is about, it's the story of this little prince who lives on an asteroid in space, and he gets to meet all sorts of characters, and it's kind of like a hyperbole, a metaphor for life. It's a very philosophical book if you read this in that frame, but also it makes a beautiful bedtime stories for children. I read this book when I was, I believe, 8 years old, and I loved it as a fairy tale. And then I reread it when I was 16, and I enjoyed it a lot more because of the life lessons that are in here about kindness, about friendship, about what it's like to love and to be loved in all sorts of ways. It's wonderful. If you haven't read it, now it's the time. I am telling you, read The Little Prince. Woo! Next, another very existential and philosophical book. It's Damien by Hermann Hesse. You might know this author because it's the same of the series Siddhartha. I have read Damien because of BTS. I know, a weird reason to read a book because of a K-pop group, but when I was very, very, very much into BTS, they put out some music videos that were tied to this book. So I was like, I want to understand what is going on. I'm going to read this book. Still didn't understand anything about the music videos, but this book. I feel like if I have to give you a synopsis, I'm going to like ruin the book because it's a book about life, just life. A life of this very young boy who's very uncertain of who he wants to be, how he wants to be, what is going on with his future and his past, and he meets this other boy that is kind of like a godlike creature, an angel born into earth, but we don't know if he's a real boy or a figment of his imagination. And the story develops from there, and there is war, there is philosophical contrast between the ego and the soul, if you believe in soul. So very, very deep and thought-provoking book. I urge you to read this. This is actually 157 pages and it's actually very big font, so yeah. Next, I'm going to talk about a very popular author that is Haruki Murakami, and I divide his books into two categories. The very long philosophical existential books and the very short, weird, what the fuck am I reading books. These are the short, what the fuck am I reading books. This is Ranocchio Salva Tokyo, with the cover is illustrated by my favorite artist ever, Lorenzo Ciccotti. I've talked about him a lot on my channel, but I love him so much. The original title is Kairakun Tokyo Sku. So it's basically Frog Saving Tokyo. It's very short, very, very short. Is 60 pages with illustrations, so even less, but my edition has beautiful illustration. Lorenzo Ciccotti is a genius. And then Gli assalti alle panetterie, so the assault on bakeries, and the original title is Panya Shugeki, or then changed to Panya Saishugeki. So also very short book with illustrations, so even less. It's 57 pages and the illustrations are, yeah, very big, very beautiful, very bold and brash, to quote Mr. Squidward. These two books, like The Strange Library, another one that I don't have, but it's in the same category of weird, very, very short books, are books that you like buy and you read in half an hour and you are left with like, what? But then you think about it and you're like, oh, now I get it. So I really like reading these books because they make me feel very smart after a while. I encourage you to read Haruki Murakami because I really enjoy his books, but if his other books seem very like daunting because they're very big, these are a nice solution. Ooh. Next, this is an author that is very, very dear to my heart. It's Maxence Fermin, another French author. He writes middle grade books like these. These are very, very tiny books. The font is super big. This is La piccola mercante di sogni, this is La bambola di porcellana. These are middle grade fairy tales that are written like poetry. The writing is so incredibly beautiful. If you read The Girl That Circumnavigated Fairyland, that series, if you like that, you're going to love these. These also have beautiful illustrations, so like these, and the font very big, very spaced. So these are 200 pages, but it reads like a 60-page book. These, as I said, are very much like fairy tales of girls that are being taken into this magical, beautiful world where everything is weird and everything is possible. If you have a kid, I encourage you to read this to him because they are so beautiful. They are like poetry, but in prose. That's great. And these take like an hour to finish. Maxence Firmin, he is another one of the middle grade authors that like gets it, because his stories are so full of wonder and passion, and you can feel that he truly loved what he was writing about. Next, I have more of an author recommendation, and it's an Italian author this time, and it's Italo Calvino with his very famous trilogy. I'll insert the books here. And then one of my favorite books ever of my life is Six Mementos for the New Millennium by Italo Calvino. Italo Calvino is actually a very recent author for Italian history. His century was the 20th century, so very recent, but we already study him in schools. So he had a huge impact on Italian literature and like Western literature in general. He gave his Six Mementos for the New Millennium is actually a series of speech he gave in America, so he was super international. His books are so tiny and they're so accessible because they in middle school they told us his books were requirement reading, and I was so happy because his books are so incredibly good. They take a very classical element of literature like knights and armors and damsel in distress, and they take this like very modern approach to them, and it's like another one that it feels like a fairy tale if you're a little child, and then you read them and as an adult and you're like, oh my god, this is blowing my mind. Also, if you're an author, please read Six Mementos for the New Millennium, because they are actually 6 lessons that he gave on writing. And there is one particular lesson that it's about simplicity and like the weight of words and the weight of phrases, that it was so beautiful, so beautiful. I urge you, please read Italo Calvino's books, please. Okay, the last book I'm going to talk about is a actually very recent one. I read this in 2019 and it was somewhat popular, but I feel like there's not enough people that talk about it, and it's Silver in the Woods. This is a very short book that is like, I think adult fantasy, I would call it. It's about this man that lives in the woods and protects it, and he is actually a very old being that has been brought into the woods by a very antique spell, and there's a whole history about it. And there is this young man that gets travels into the town and wants to discover the history of this man, and they meet. It's also a queer story, so I loved it. And the sequel is going to get published this year, very soon, so this will be the perfect timing to support Silver in the Woods. So yeah, I hope I convinced you to at least try one of these tiny books. We have right at the end of my infomercial for teeny tiny books. That has been it. I urge you to read. like we don't have anything else better to do, and reading is actually a very good pastime. Uh, so yeah, I don't have an intro nor an outro, so I think I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!